Let's get started. Topic for today, replication, right? Grabbing something that's good and trying to move it to someplace else and also get something that's good. So that's kind of the topic for today is replication. As always, we are Continual Impact, right? That is Pam. This is Chris. All right. We are Continual Impact. Been around for, I don't know, something 11 years or so. Basically helping folks out, see if we can work together to help the performance of the organization. Whether it's strategic annual planning, applying particular methods to solve problems, improve capacity, increase quality, and doing lots of training along the way to get you some knowledge. So that's us. If you would like, join us at continualimpact.com. Oh, and also a shout out. Pretty soon you will see a revamping of our website. So you will get another experience, hopefully an improved experience in our website as well. So that's us. All right, for today, here's what we're going to try to do. I'll try to get a dialogue going here and get you an understanding of replication, get you a couple things maybe to think about as you consider replication, you know, what it is, benefits, the process to do it so that you can do it, right? Which has a lot of power to it for any team's performance. We're going to cover the what, the why, the how. At the end of it, we'll do some questions and answers. We'll try to leave a couple minutes in there, open up mics if you want to, you know, talk about a specific thing. And if you do this kind of thing and do it well, and you have the opportunity to do it, what you're doing is kind of like leveraging all that great knowledge that's out there from other places and applying it broader, you know, and helping improve the performance of the organization. So that's what we're going to try to do is just kind of push back the frontiers of replication, hopping up and down replication. Basic noun, right? The action of copying or reproducing something, right? And I'd probably add to in the context that we're talking about here, maybe two things. One is copying it and getting a consistent result, getting that good benefit and maybe even, you know, better as you move forward. And when we talk about kind of applying replication, think of it as in the context of applying, you know, kind of a new, replicating a new and improved work process. Could also do it kind of to the physical environment. If you're familiar with things like 5 S's and things like that, where you're improving kind of the search time and the where everything's at in an area so that it's easier to work in. So you can apply replication as well, kind of to an area type of thing. We'll probably talk more about replicating work processes than anything else here in the morning. All right. So let's just say that somebody out there has done like just something wonderful, right? You just kind of gone through and you've done your rapid improvement Kaizen, you've done a project or something, and it's just aces, it's good, celebrate, right? Good stuff. Okay, consider this. Think about it. Where else can you use this thing? Where else can it be replicated? Replication can occur inside an organization. You can whatever replicate, you know, like a filling out time cards and things like that from one section, one department to another. You can replicate across, you know, from one grant area, one programmatic area to another. You know, replicate to different organizations, partner organizations even. If you're, say, for example, local health department in a state. Hey, what about replicating to all of the local health departments in the entire state? Whoa. Okay. So, I mean, there's lots of places that, you know, you can consider replication. Another question is, how do you do this? It's a basic, how do I effectively take this thing and get it over into, you know, somebody else's hands so that they can do it well, want to do it, right? They're receiving it, you know, kind of well, into whatever this new process or area is. What do you do if, well, they're not quite the same, right? You have a different computer system than I have a different computer system. You do it with a computer system, I do it manually, all right? So, you know, you're very large as an organization. We're a little tiny and small, and there's only the 4 of us, you know, kind of thing. All right. So you get this other fundamental question around what do you do if it's not quite the same? And if I am kind of the area that, kind of you want to replicate something in, can I trust it? Interesting question, right? It's like, ooh, do I really trust, if Pam's got something and she, is offering it up for replication into my area? Ooh, I don't know about that. All right. So you got these questions that sometimes affect either the approach that you use for replication. Also has something to do with change management and getting people comfortable with, kind of wanting to replicate it and accepting the replication. So, like most things, right? There's a process that you can, can get some guidance from in terms of replicating something. It's just simply a method, right? It's basically kind of a step-by-step method that helps you transfer stuff from one area to another. The second thing that's important to note is that it basically follows that old improvement cycle, right? The Shewhart cycle, the plan, do, study, act, right? It's modified a little bit. We're going to talk about that in just a second, because it's got some distinct differences as you go to try to replicate something than if you were trying to improve something for the first time. The other thing to note is that one of the good success factors, critical success factors, if you want to talk about it that way, is that the preparation going into it is really important. And we'll explain that a little bit more as well. So modifications to the improvement cycle and prep is important. That's what we really want you thinking about. Okay, so let's talk about like what's different in replication and what happens. All right, so if something new and improved exists out there, all right, so let's say Pam did do that, all right, and Chris was wanted to replicate it. In that first phase of the improvement cycle, where normally, right, you're setting a goal, you're collecting data, you're trying to figure out what the issues are, you're identifying solutions to them. This is different. In this one, right, the solutions exist, right? They're in the new process. What's important to do in this first phase in plan is understand what that new process is. And we'll give you some more around that, because it's not just like the map, it's the what, the why it was done, the how it's done, those kinds of things. So one of the things that you do kind of in the upfront step of replication is gathering knowledge, right? Gathering knowledge from the source. All right, second thing is, as I said, that prep step. There's several things there that we want to show you that are important that you can actually do beforehand. So it speeds the whole thing, because that's one of the important things about replication. And what you also want to do is identify, if any adaptation is necessary or not. All right, lots of replications, they don't require any adaptation. Some cases they are, so you're trying to identify them. The rest of it isn't too far away from basic replication process, right? You're testing out, when I go to try this new process, but I'm just testing out to see whether I replicate it. I'm not testing out any kind of new improvements to it. I'm learning from it and I'm installing it. So if you kind of like put these two things together, when you go to replicate something, right, you're not doing a whole lot of problem solving, right? It's basically done already for you. I mean, that's what you're trying to do, is replicate. Why bother reinventing the wheel, so to speak, right? You're trying to basically replicate, a known and good solution. The kind of the trying it and the learning it is more limited to just simply if there is any adaptation, and the installation of it is basically very similar to an improvement project. So those are the kind of the big picture kind of thing. Now, talk about the two things that I mentioned earlier. The first one is just understanding kind of the what you are trying to replicate. Now, a little blue box up there is kind of some interesting findings from some studies and some comments from folks. Makes you kind of pause a little bit. It's basically an attention getter for this part of this webinar. there's something actually out there called replication crisis that people have reported out on over the last several years. They basically say that, oops, something's not quite right here, because 70% of the time that folks try to do the same experiment and basically confirm the same findings, they failed to do it. They failed to reproduce at least one thing. So somebody is saying out there, actually more, it's a survey of a couple thousand, kind of scientists and folks, but basically say that thing that's reported out there, 70% of the time, we can't replicate at least one significant thing in. Oops, all right, be careful. The second thing is, if you like reading, there's an interesting book by a guy named Pfeffer. It's got an interesting title, Hard Facts, Dangerous Half-Truths, and Total Nonsense. And he basically reports out on all kinds of things that organizations do that were regarded as, best practice or something to be replicated. And there was a hole in it, and it actually did not work, kind of thing. So to kind of prevent yourself from kind of getting in that, kind of place where there's something out there that you're trying to replicate that may have some holes to it, you want to, in that first step, gather some knowledge. You want to understand not just what was done, but why, right? So as you're kind of talking to folks, who are kind of originated this thing, not just the what and how it was done, but why that was good, kind of thing. Important thing to do. The other thing is you want to understand the context. What else was going on, right? Let's just say somebody was trying to redo like a call center process or something, folks picking up the phone, either addressing problems or taking an order or something. And you replicate the process and you didn't get the same result. Oh, well, what happened? Okay, so you go back to the kind of the people that, kind of sponsored it or whatever, and started asking some more questions. They say, oh, I forgot to tell you that at the same time we taught everybody good communication skills. And we didn't show in our standardized work or whatever that we changed the phone tree or the script that people use. Oh, thanks a lot, kind of thing. So you want to understand the what and the why, and also what else was going on. What's the context? If you do, you kind of have a higher probability of success around replicating and getting the same result. The other thing is pay attention to kind of the claimed results and measures. Make sure you understand them. Make sure they're solid. All right. Now, this doesn't have to take months and months and months. It takes asking the right questions when you're trying to kind of pull information, because you're trying to grab whatever exists for, kind of what you're trying to replicate, which is, the helpful ones are process maps, standardized work, the forms, the templates, the training materials would be another good, good one to grab. So if you grab that stuff, you're in a much more powerful place. The other thing is kind of preparation for this and getting into it is another kind of big deal in terms of, kind of quickly getting there. Of course, you need leadership support, right? So if I'm going to replicate something and redo, like I said, the call center process or whatever, yeah, better make sure that, we got support, we got resources to do it. You can often way up front identify anything that's fundamentally different. Like I said, Pam's got a fancy computer system. I'm still here in the country, so I just got manual stuff and pencils and paper. All right, okay. So I either got to kind of like replicate that computer, or I've got a piece here that I've got to kind of put some kind of placeholders in for pencil and paper. You want to summarize the learnings from what we just talked about on the previous slide. Another thing that you can do, again, you want to get fast here because you're trying to replicate. One of the benefits of replication is you get your benefits faster, all right, because you're not going through a whole kind of problem solving process. So you want to summarize up the things that you learned from that. In some cases, heck, you can order supplies and things like that, so they're all sitting right there. So I can just kind of get a few folks and a team together and do this. The other thing not to miss is the change management piece. Pam will give you some insights a little bit later around kind of like what are some of the levers for change management here. One of the powerful ones is communication, communication, communication. Let people know the what, the why, the how. Right? One of the things that helps people out, want to replicate is both that they're informed, but also they know why, something's done. Not just why we're replicating it, but why certain things are different in the process. The other thing that's very helpful is get a link to whoever was the knowledge for, that produced it. So, you want to say, okay, I'm going to replicate this thing over here. Whatever, Pam, can you be, available on phone for the next 2 days as we go through this? So we have some questions, we can get, kind of the insights and the answers to things. So some tips around how to do this better. Now, you can accelerate this thing. Right, you can do it in different formats. All right, one of our favorite ways to do it is a rapid action form, what we call a Kaizen form. We call it replication Kaizen, to be blunt about it. All right, because it's focused, it's getting the folks together and kind of getting it done. Right, pretty simple stuff. Rather than in some cases for work process Kaizen, like 5 days of stuff. It's basically like 2.5 days kind of thing, where you do your prep work up front, you gather your knowledge and the stuff we just talked about. And then you get the folks in the room, you align to the goal, the approach, you walk through the process and the standardized work, you resolve any of those adaptation issues. You basically say, what are the tasks and the action plan that we need to, kind of put this in place? If there are any particular rollout actions, like we need to change a layout or we need to change one of our forms or whatever, you basically do it right then, train people up. So that literally, like on day 3, we're turning the lights on. All right, we're going to start going live. We're going to gather data into the new process, because when you do turn the lights on and go live, you want to start measuring results and starting to compare it to what was the norm for, what you're trying to replicate, extracting learnings, and basically installing it and continuing to improve it. All right. A couple of other things that you can do. You can basically kind of, particularly if you have multiple sites that you want to replicate to. Some of you do. Take, for example, take COVID, for example. You talk about COVID testing, COVID vaccinations, say in a whole state. Say I have a state of 100 local health departments, or 25 or whatever. Well, wouldn't it be nice if we could have kind of identified the process, the work process that we wanted to replicate, and basically got it quickly across, every place. Now, you can do it in a couple of ways. One is you could literally get everybody involved in the initial creation of it. Now, that may be a little bit overwhelming sometimes. The other way to do it is with what we call a cascaded approach, where one site does it, proves it, and then 2 sites will replicate. And then those 2 sites will replicate to 2 other sites. Now, here's the little secret sauce and the trick. One of the powerful things is to connect it with people. So when the first site does it, what you want is at least one representative from the next 2 sites who are in there, right? They get to see it. They get to see the good stuff. They get some of the insights into the whys. Okay, they go back home and say, yes, this is good. They help with the change management thing. And then you do the same thing, they go out and go to replicate. They grab 2 folks from, those 2 sites. Yeah, you can do it with 3. There's nothing, special about 2. It's just, it's manageable. What that does is, if you think about it and you got a bunch of sites, boy, it goes fast. You're able to spread out and get a lot of replication going powerfully and well. All right.
I just want to mention back where you were, Chris, for a moment, just a case history and example that I have lived, and Chris, you have lived it as well with me, right? This was, we had 50 branches that were doing kind of sort of the same process, and the goal was to get them standardized and elevated in their performance. And so it takes me back to Rochester, New York, and we did the first Kaizen event. and we created success. And we looked at that and said, wow, there is so much good here that we cannot just keep it in Rochester. We need to get it to the other 50 branches. And that's what we did. We then created that standard right off of Rochester's process, and then proceeded to do rapid Kaizen implementations into all 50. And we did it, and we'll show you some examples here. We did it in 15 months. So we got to 50 locations in a new process and a standard elevated process within 15 months. So it really is a pretty powerful, doable thing. But let's talk more about that power and the benefits. Chris alluded to a couple of these, right? The speed that you can get to benefits, you can get pain taken out of your work, you can get to results so much faster. You can do it with less labor time, less labor costs, because as Chris said, you've solved a lot of this already. So now instead of spending months or weeks or maybe even a 5-day Kaizen, you can do it in 3 days, 2.5 days, and get the same power. You also come in with more trust and probability of success. We know this has worked in this place. So we have confidence and trust in that person, in that process, in that thing, that it's going to work for us. So you have a probability of greater success. And that's super important when you're trying to get leadership involved or getting them to support it, or you're trying to engage your staff members in taking on something that they didn't create, that came from someone else, because you can say, look, Holly did it over here. And so, we know it's going to work. The other thing is, along the way, you're creating this social network that's connecting each other. So if you remember that cascaded pyramid, right? So site 1, site 2, site 3, you're going to find those points of light. And now you can use each other to say, hey, something else has come up. Have you had this problem? How can I address it? And it's going to create that social network to really help you keep going as well. So let's expand on some of these benefits. Let's talk about speed as an example. So you can go site by site, location by location, department by department, and implement something. And it could take, and we have here, 7 to 8 months. It could take years for some people, right? It could take, months or years. In the cascading and the benefit piece of cascading it, as Chris just showed, you can do it in months, right? So your speed, as you can see there, is really, really decreased. Get you that benefit faster. How about the labor piece? So let's just do 2 quick math calculations. And you knew you were going to come to a webinar to do math, right? So let's just say you have, 6 people in a project or a Kaizen event, and they're consumed for 5 days. And you do this 15 times, you've consumed 36 hours to create improvement in 15 places. You take 6 people one time, create that improvement, and then the remaining 14, same 6 people, but in less time, you get almost a 50% reduction in labor time. So you can get to this faster, and you can get to this with lower costs, and you're going to have a tried and true evidence-based thing that you're replicating. So those are a little bit more on those 2 benefits. Let's kind of close out this morning with a couple closing tips or guidance based on what we have done and failed, what we have done and done right. Get some training. If you're going to facilitate this, get some training, particularly as Chris mentioned, on the preparation, so that you really know how to set things up for success, so that you can replicate and get that speed and get that lower cost. Next tip here is touch the bases. Just like there's PDSA, right? Don't skip right from, I'm going to plan it out. Okay, now let's just go implement it, right? You do need a little bit of like, let's try this out here to see whether that replication works here. Because just because you're able to get referrals and you did it this way, I can't just say, okay, I'll just take it. You need to try it out, get some confidence, get your team members saying, oh, this is good, this will work. Because then when you get into that last step of ACT, they're going to want to keep it. They're going to want to adopt what you're bringing. Another tip here is Chris mentioned it, the upfront, really understand what's going on in that first case and understand how the best practice, that thing that you're replicating, was created, so that you don't miss those pieces and those parts that are hidden. And use different improvement methods. We love using Kaizen. We've used Kaizen and we've used Flow as two advanced improvement techniques, or methods rather, to implement replicate faster. And don't forget the communication, right? So throughout, just like any other improvement, any other activity, replication's not different. Communicating frequently to your stakeholders so they understand what is coming, why it's coming, how they can be involved, how they can ask questions, so that they're coming along on the journey with you and they embrace that change. And last tip for this morning here is try to overcome when people say, well, we're different. Try to overcome, well, I have to create it here. There are so many awesome best practices. There's so many things that happen that are from smarter people, or people with more time or more creativity, or just more resources to create things that you want to replicate. So open up your minds and say, yep, it doesn't have to be created here. And we may be different, but we're going to find that little nugget around how they've done billing, or the little nugget of how they've got more people to sign up for their services. And we're going to take that and replicate it in-house and make it customized to fit for us. So a couple tips today. And that is replication. We do have the chat line open, and Chris can unmute if you have questions, if you would like to ask. Now is a great time.